Hi everyone, we continue our deep dive into each segment of my comprehensive Notion life operating system. So we can look at ways that this might enhance your operations and your pursuit of the things in life that matter most to you and how to execute day to day to get from here to there. Today is a particularly important video in looking at the whole system because today we're looking at the daily action zone dashboard. This is the dashboard I spend more time in than any other, the one I open most frequently. I start my day in, I end my day in, I jump into it, I don't even know how many times throughout the day. So this is where the day-to-day, minute-to-minute action gets done. This is where things happen. So super excited to bring together the last two videos, which talked about daily tracking, and prior to that, the master task database, which I call my action items database. This all rolls up into here. Some other things roll up too, but those are the two most critical elements at the top of the page that drive my behavior day to day and help me get things done with a view on the overall objectives of my life and my business. So if you haven't seen it, about a week ago, I did a bird's eye overview of my entire Notion life operating system. Also, to give a little context, we're working within my pillars, pipelines, and vaults PPV organizing structure. We're going to do a video later that helps explain that in greater detail. It was introduced in the overview video. But just to give you some context, the last two videos and this one and the next few are all in the pipelines area. These are the action areas where things get done, where they move through pipelines, where behaviors and tasks and projects all move forward. This is the pipeline zone. Separately, I organize other parts of my Notion system into pillars. These are the structures that hold your life up, that keep the roof on to both your life now and the aspirations you have for the life you want to create. And then we have the vaults, which are about storage and information management, resources that support the pipelines and the pillars. So we'll get to all that. Once we've gone through each section, I'll do an overview on the pillars, pipelines, and vaults organizational system. But we will have, at that point, done a deep dive into how Notion explicitly executes for each category. And then when we tie it together, it'll make a lot more sense. So today we're bringing together tasks and daily tracking into a dashboard, and then a little bit of linking that to the structure above. After this video, the ones that come next, we'll start looking at projects and various other types of action pipelines, such as content production or other business elements, where you have to get things done and move them through sequence or a pipeline. And then we'll move from that into pillars, and then we'll move from that into various knowledge management vaults. So lots to come, but today's an important one, so let's get into it. Okay, so this is the command center. This is the top level dashboard, which we did a video on 3 or 4 videos ago showing how to make this. If you're new to Notion, that video has a lot of the beginner introductory aspects of how to add elements to a page and create a page. But the very number one position in the command center dashboard is the action zone, which is also a dashboard. So we're going to link through to this dashboard. This is a page. Everything at the top is in collapsible toggles. Toggles are great, especially for the top level. I put a lot of thought into what goes above the fold, meaning what is at the top level without any scrolling. So you see we start to get a due date calendar. Again, I use DO dates rather than DUE dates. We talked about that in the task management database. And we'll get a glimpse of that. That's where a lot of the action happens. But above that, we have these toggles that organize views of what matters most day to day, minute to minute, hour to hour. So today items, which is what's open most of the day. This is the priority section, but we'll come back to that after we do this quick overview. Tomorrow, we have a similar view for tomorrow. We have one that's similar for the upcoming week, depending on how I want to look at it. And then we've got waiting on, which are tasks that are either someone else's, the ball's in their court and I'm waiting for them to finish their part before I can proceed, or they're dependent tasks, which we did a video on 2 videos ago about how to set up dependent tasks in your task database. We'll see more of that as we see them integrated into the dashboard here. And then the not to do list. This is a quick one, but an important one to define the things that you know you often get pulled off track on. Write them out. Be very deliberate and intentional, defining what it is you are going to be certain not to let pull you off track. Write them out, define them. I put them in red. I don't want to forget them. I look at this periodically and I know these are the culprits that pull me in distractions that are unproductive and unhelpful. So I've got things like not to do list includes no distractions, tangents, or rabbit holes. Do the work as planned. no erratic starts or slow transitions. I really pay attention to quick starts and quick transitions between items on the action item list, which is my task list. No junk food, no food late in the day. I really train myself in terms of healthy eating to the extent possible, but sometimes we get pulled off track. I need to remind myself this is one of my red alerts that I need to be extra careful about. And do not obsess over perfection in early drafts. That's something that a lot of us have trouble with. Some obvious stuff, you create a list that's for you, that has the things that often pull you off track. Write them out, be deliberate, make sure you are on top of them. All right, so that's the basic toggle setup. Now let's go into what matters most here, which is today. I'm gonna scroll this up so we can see more of it. This is the central focus point of the action zone. On the top, I have an embedded view of my action items, which is my task database, what some people call a master task database. The view is filtered to show anything on or before today. This is important, not just on today, but on or before. So if you forget to move something forward, it won't get lost. And it's not done, meaning there's no check mark in the done property or field. And waiting on is not checked, so it's not on hold while somebody else advances it. And the owner contains me. So I share this with others on my team. This means I get a view only of my tasks because this is my personal action zone. That's an important point. Someone had a question on a previous video. This is the setup for my personal action. Other people on the team, I'll have them have similar views for their own personal action. This is not the team view. That would be a different dashboard with a different arrangement. So this is personal. All right, we're sorting by priority. Right here by priority. That's the key. Now, this is already sorted by due date, and I use a DO date, not a DUE date, as my primary due date focus because I'm focused on when I'm doing it, not when it has to be done. Now, I do have a DUE date over here on the right, and if a task has that, I need to be aware of it, but the DO date will be obviously prior to the DUE date, and the whole system is based on DO dates. If you didn't see my previous video, the essential point is every action item has a DO date or is a dependent task on another task that has a due date. That's how everything works. So the first order of sorting is by date. What dates have you said I'm going to address this? Now, addressing something might mean rescheduling it, but generally the night before I will lay out what I'm doing the next day. I will prioritize and define what the objectives are for the following day. Anything that is not viable, it's too much to get done in one day. Anything that doesn't fit into the day, I will reschedule to a future day, either to do it or to then reschedule it and assess it on that future date. But when I come into work in the morning, my scheduling from last night is all laid out. It's all clean. I know what I need to do. There's no clutter. There are no fantasy wish list items that are impossible, but still cluttering the view. Everything in here is viable, doable, and if I execute properly, will get done. Now, of course, surprises come up and then you adjust. But the intention is that this is a totally doable priority list and you know what to do as you sit down. There's no slack time figuring it out. And as we talked about previously, I have these priority lists, immediate and quick stuff that'll take a few minutes. I'll just knock out and get them off the list, get the list shorter and again, more focused. Scheduled, any item with an actual time will be designated in the priority as scheduled. So all my time items are together. So that's like a little calendar view right there. And then I have my top priorities for the day, get these first priority, second, third, fourth, fifth priority designations. Those are the big projects, the things I really need to get done in order. Now, I never have multiple ones with the same priority unless they're being batched together. So these three, all with first priority, are all listed as first because I'm batching them together. I'm recording these 3 videos together in one sitting. So that is why they all have first. Otherwise, if they were different tasks that could only be done one at a time, it'd be first, second, third, and then fourth or fifth. If I try to keep it to 2 or 3 major projects a day, unless they're short, then I'll add the 4th and the 5th one. Then just finally to recap, I'll mark anything that's an errand if I have to run out for something quickly, but there's no specific time I have to do it. It'll be marked as errand. And remember if there's just a reminder I want to try to squeeze in if time permits. When I get something done, I check done. If I hand it off to someone else and I'm dependent upon them to move it forward, then I'll check waiting. Let's just check this off as waiting. You'll see down here, it'll pop up in my waiting item down here, but we'll come back to that. So I'm going to undo that. So if I check done, it would disappear as well. I do have for the end of the day, I have a completed today view. So I check that. So nothing's showing up because I haven't completed. Let's say I did complete something. I would hit done. Then I would, at the end of the day, when I'm reviewing the day, I have all my completed items and it makes it very clear what I achieved that day. It's really helpful to see what you achieved because it's so easy to feel like you got nothing done. But if you actually at the end of the day take a glance at everything you achieved with a completed view, you kind of feel better about it, about your day. At least if you got a few things done, which you should. With a system like this, it's hard not to get things done. Okay, so if it's scheduled, it'll have a time over here. So tomorrow I have some more things scheduled. Let's take a quick peek of tomorrow just to see how that works. So 3 scheduled items with the times, they're all clumped together so it's easy to see when I need to be available for something else. We'll briefly come back to that, but that's pretty simple. All right, next in line. In the previous video, I showed how I do dependent tasks, where there's a string of tasks dependent on the first one being completed, then a second one being completed in order. This next in line will tell me if any of these have a dependent task following it. I also put a little plus mark in front of dependent tasks, so I know when I check that as done, the next in line, I click on it, it would be linked here. I would just open it up. There aren't any, so I'm not doing it, but I would open that specific task up, assign it a due date, a DO date, which could be tomorrow or any time in the future, or even today. You could sign it today if you have time to move on to the next one. But you basically take the next one in the string, the next in line, you can see the title there, and you activate it with a due date, and then you check off this one is done. Then it's completed. Production pipeline, this links to my production calendar, or what I call the production pipeline database. We'll do a future video on that, but just note that this is directly linked and I can open that up and that's where all the workspaces for each video that I'm developing, whether I need links or research or if there's a script, anything, it goes into that workspace right there and it's easily accessible. If there's a client, there's no client on this one. Tomorrow, we have a lot of these activities are client-based tomorrow. So I have a link to the client. I click on that. I open the client's workspace and it's all right there. It takes no time to get there. It's right there. And then if there's a due date, if I have notes, normally, okay, so this is requiring me to scroll a lot. Normally I have a view more like this where I can see a lot more, but I'm magnifying it just so that you guys can see it more clearly on the video. So I usually don't have to scroll this much. If I do, just have a mouse that has a side-to-side scroll, or if you hold shift, the normal roller that scrolls up and down, if you hold shift, you can scroll side to side very easily. And that's how you get around this database. So also, importantly, all of these are linked to my projects, my life pillars, my goal outcomes, and that gives me a bird's eye view, especially as I open them. So this lays it out. If you want to see what they look like inside and how it all connects to the pyramid above this level in terms of life pillars and goals, I talked a little bit about that in the task database video, and we'll talk a lot more about that when we get to the pillars pipeline pyramid video. But this lays it all out in a very actionable way. Just for today, I've got no distractions. I've seen a lot of approaches that take a week-long view and people will spend their day-to-day, minute-to-minute action in this week-long view. To me, that's not good because you have so much other stuff that's not relevant to the task at hand at this moment. This gives me a really micro view of what I do now, what I do next. Nothing about tomorrow, not a giant task list piling up that I can see just waiting that I'm never getting to or I'm getting to too slowly. Just what matters next. What I do today, what I do this hour, what I do as soon as that's done, what I do as soon as that's done, nothing but today. Now in the previous video, I showed you my daily tracking database. Now in the Action Zone dashboard, I have one slice only of the daily tracking database, and that is today, of course. I'm in the today toggle. It's all in today, and we have just today's slice. So this is filtered, date is today. Now, as I showed you in the previous video, if we click on this, we go into what we saw in the previous video, which is the full database. And in the morning, first thing when I sit down is I go through and enter the data in the front. This is all finished in the morning up through this first meditation. Then when I flip over to my daily action zone today action items view, which is this toggle, again, we're in this one toggle, I get just a slice and it starts just with the habit tracking. It doesn't have all the data entered in the morning because that data is completed. I'm now only tracking what I have left to keep track of throughout the day. So when I come in the morning, I've done that. I've gone into the daily tracker, entered my morning data, which usually includes the morning meditation having been done. So I'll see that first. Now the rest of my morning routine is going through the next 3 things. Doing my bullet planner, I will do that. I will do a future video on what that's all about. Then I'll check it off. I'll do my mindset work, which is linked right here. There's a whole page that takes me through my mindset routine every single morning. And then I'll check that off. And then I'll do my visualization. I will do a visualization practice on how I want to execute the day coming up. Or if there's a particularly challenging thing coming up, a tough sales meeting or a big presentation or something that is out of the norm, I will do a visualization practice, walking myself through that experience. But most of the time, I'm just visualizing executing today flawlessly. And when I talk about morning routines, we'll get more into all of this, the bullet planner, the mindset routine, and the visualization. Obviously, workout, I try to, in the afternoon, get back to a workout. My priority is starting work earlier, getting content underway and getting client projects underway. So my workouts are usually in the afternoon. There have been times when workout was a higher priority. Then that would be something I do first thing in the morning. Prioritize the most important thing early. Things later in the day tend to get pushed around and more at risk of getting bumped. But wherever your workout is in your routine, have it sequentially in this habit tracker. These should be sequential, the order you do them. Of course, you can do them out of order, but the way you typically do them, that's the order they should be in. At the end of the day, I'll click schedule tomorrow, which is going up here or down to the calendar down here and taking everything that didn't get done today, moving it forward, setting the priorities for tomorrow, seeing if it's too much on the calendar for tomorrow, I will move some of those due dates forward into the calendar. And so when I sit down tomorrow, I get this view again. Only the things I'm going to do today, but all of the things realistically doable today and no clutter beyond that. So I've got my action list of what I'm going to execute on today and my tracking as I go through the day. At the end of the day, I'll schedule tomorrow and then check this off. I will rate my diet for the day. How healthy did I eat that day? How well did I live up to my goal of healthy eating? And then I will enter the on schedule column. So this is what percent, this is a percentage, it might be like 70%. What percent of the time throughout the day did I spend on the things I had scheduled? Inevitably things come up and you have to react. Well, that time reacting to other things is the 30% if I had 70% on track. So I want to keep that number as high as possible, but of course things happen, so you have to adjust. But I track day to day. What percent of my time during the day was spent on the thing I had intended to spend my time on? Then, similarly but different, what percent of the output today did I achieve relative to what I had intended to complete? So I might have hit 65% of that. So 70% of my time was on track, and I completed 65% of what I had set out to complete. This could actually be higher than on time. If I ended up being more efficient than I expected and I hit 90% with this, I spent 70% on schedule, but completed 90% of what I intended. That's how that would look. Or it could be the inverse. I might get even just 40% done of what I intended, even though I spent 70% on track. So that tells me whether I'm biting off more than I can chew each day, helps me calibrate the amount to queue up for each day. And it also, it's gamification. This is a scorecard on how successful I was at implementing that day. How good was I at executing what I set out in the morning to do? And if I'm coming in with low numbers, if I'm coming in with 30% and 25%, I know something's wrong. And I need to think about this. If I see this more than one day in a row, I'm like sitting down with myself and asking what's going on here. And then the next day, I am determined to get those numbers up. So that's gamification to me, not clever little formulas doing jumping jacks and backflips all over the place. To me, it's, am I delivering on what I set out to deliver? If yes, then I get a high score. If no, I get a low score. That's what matters. That's what I measure. That's my scoreboard. Okay, that is today's action item. We saw it tomorrow. It's the same thing. There's no daily tracking for tomorrow because it's tomorrow. We do have the same layout of action items with next in line, the due date, all that stuff. So tomorrow's simple. Upcoming week is exactly like tomorrow. I should point out this is achieved, of course, with a filter. Due date is tomorrow, and done is not checked off, and waiting is not checked off. This one shouldn't be here. Owner contains me. That's simple. Then same thing for the upcoming week. And the only difference is filter is due date is on or before, 1 week from now. That can be helpful if I'm scheduling, but frankly, the calendar view down here just kills on that, does it so much better. So we'll get to that in a moment. Waiting on, this is super important. I showed you how up here we had waiting check. If we check that, it disappears from today. It pops up in waiting on. There's the item. If we uncheck it, it goes back up. Now I'm waiting on this proposal from Neil. Ball's in his court, waiting. I can't do anything on it until he gets it done. Same thing with this feedback down here. Now in my weekly review, I will review this so nothing slips through the cracks. And if somebody's taking too long, then I will assign a due date to follow up. A priority ranking of just quick, because it'll only take a second to shoot a 1-sentence email saying, hey, how's that coming along? Once I set the priority and the due date, I'll uncheck this and it'll disappear from waiting. It's no longer waiting, it's now scheduled. So I'll go down to the calendar for Friday, and the quick item is Neil proposal. I can check on it. So the action item here is to check on it, not to do it. Okay, so this importantly lets me know whether something is getting stuck or may have slipped through the cracks or somebody may have forgotten about it. It's very important you have a waiting list of some sort, and it's just super easy. Checkbox, waiting or not waiting. If it's waiting, you don't need to have a priority or a due date. It doesn't really mean anything because all the filters in this dashboard screen out for waiting, because you don't want that clutter. If it's not something you can act on, you don't want it listed. I don't want my waitings listed in my today action zone because they're not actionable. Everything here is actionable today, doable today. If I'm waiting on something, it should not be here. It's just clutter. It's getting in the way of the clarity I want on what I must be doing now. The other view I have here is dependent actions, which is what we did a whole video on 2 videos ago, right after the task database video. This shows the action items that do not have due dates assigned are dependent action items, meaning they will kick in some cases, a whole string of many of them, a long series of them will kick in when the one that the first one is waiting on, let's take this one, it's following this one. That one is assigned for March 25th. Once that's done on March 25th, that gets checked off and that's done. And this one gets a due date. That's the first in the sequence after that following. Then the one behind it, once this gets done, the one behind it will get a due date. That's the row behind it. When that one gets checked off, the one behind it, labeled as next in line, will get a due date. And then when that gets done, the one behind it will get a due date, then the whole sequence, the whole chain has been completed. I don't look in here too often, but once in a while, this is a nice way to organize it and set it up if I'm setting up a new string of them. We did that in a previous video, 2 videos ago. So if you're interested in seeing how that works, that previous video goes in deep. So, but most of the time I leave this on waiting on others. You have to really keep on top of stuff you're waiting on because so often it just somehow disappears from their to-do list. Very few people have action item management like this. So you'll find you're often the one keeping track of everything for everybody else in your circle. Now, if they're your colleagues, you need to teach them how to do it. But if there's someone you don't have control over, you need a system to track their progress as well as your own progress. And then the ongoing low priority list. This is just a little toggle list. Usually it's bullet points. Things that are not worth scheduling, not worth putting into the due date system. But if I have a free moment, I can look here for some things I wanted to read. Of course, I have Pocket and I have other apps for saving things I want to read. I have my vaults for higher priority things, but I like to keep a few things here. If I have a free moment, it's easy access to them. Now, this calendar is huge. This calendar view is so powerful. So this is the same thing we were just looking at above, the same database. It's the action items database, but this is a due date calendar, not the DUE date, the DO date. So this is everything that we saw above. When we looked at the today toggle above, this is the same thing. But look how nicely this is presented. So if I'm looking at anything more than one day, like I don't want to see all this when I'm going through my day, minute by minute, hour by hour. But when I'm getting a sense of what's coming up and how to sort things out and how to push something that's not going to get done today into the future, this view is incredible. I find this so much more valuable than the Kanban view you often see for today, tomorrow, upcoming items. The Kanban view does not use the real estate on the screen nearly as effectively. It's not as elegant to me, and it only shows a few dates out, and then it starts piling up a to-do list, which I hate. I never want to see just to-do items piling up arbitrarily. I push them out to days. These are all to schedule days. This date is scheduled. These are to schedule when I get to the night before. The night before each date, I do the actual schedule. Until then, it's not a to-do list, it's a to-schedule list. The other problem, which I've mentioned, I think in one other video, the problem with the Kanban layout for your action items is that it's very manual. It requires a lot of manipulation. To me, I set the due date and the priority, boom, everything rolls into today. Like no matter what I do, this is gonna fill up automatically from everything I have scheduled in the future. It just comes in. I don't have to slide things around and manually manipulate it. Unfortunately, the Kanban function in Notion can only sort columns by single select or multi-select, which means you can't have it sort by date. I tried to work around it by having a formula generating Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I actually tried to set up a Kanban at first. You can't sort it by formula either. So if you set up Monday, tomorrow, the next day, it won't work because you can't sort Notion Kanban board by formulas. You can only do it by single select or multi-select. And single select and multi-select are all manual. Like you have to manually assign them every day and every time you move them around. When you're assigning by due date as your primary factor for sorting and organizing what you're doing, they automatically roll in as time progresses. And then you just set the priority of the handful of things on the next due date. It's so much easier than trying to manually assign single selects and multi-selects to a long list of to-do items that will never get done today or tomorrow or this week. So, big fan of the calendar view, big fan of the table when properly sorted and managed into small quantities. Not a big fan of the Kanban board for daily action items. It's really helpful for things moving through a pipeline, like in a production pipeline. And we'll get to that. We'll see that in future videos on other dashboards. But this is incredibly powerful. And this works pretty well on mobile. It works better on the desktop, but in mobile, it gives you dots. You click on the day and then you get the list. And there's a forward back. You can swipe forward to each day and just see each list for each day. So it's pretty good. But on the desktop, this is just killer. This is so effective at managing and sorting and wrapping your mind around everything coming up without getting overwhelmed by complexity. But it's critical not to let any single day get out of control. There's only so much you can do in a day. Be realistic. If you see, well, if today piles up, move them forward to other days. Just slide them. It's so responsive. This is so dynamic how these work so quickly, and it's just literally like dragging actual cards. If a future day starts piling up big, just spread them out over a couple different days. If there's an actual hard DUE deadline, then you want to move that pretty soon. Like the things that have hard deadlines, you're going to move in the next couple days if it's in the near future. In your weekly review, you'll make sure anything with a hard deadline is getting prioritized in the near future. But don't let any one day get huge. Spread them out, and then as you come to them the night before, you'll assess what stays in that day and what gets pushed further down the line. All right, so the vast majority of my time day to day is in the today action items toggle. After that, in the calendar view, because this is just such a great view. And then tomorrow and upcoming week and waiting on as necessary. So less active on an hour by hour and even daily basis, but still important because it gives easy access, are the three sections down here: client operations, active projects, and goal outcomes. So this is a card for each active client I have with projects underway right now. It lists the days I have ongoing standing meetings every week and a few key links, and it notes that they are active. Clients that I'm not active with at the moment, either we finished the project or it's coming up, will have a different tag in the client database. We'll do a future video on that. Active projects are projects that I'm actively focused on right now. Of course, I've got various tags for active projects on hold, maybe someday, various stages of status for projects. But the ones that are active appear down here as cards. It's mainly a reminder and a direct access to the workspace for each of those projects. But importantly, each of these have action items, tasks assigned to them. In my weekly reviews and my monthly reviews, I make sure that every single project has action items designated. And we're going to get to that. Down here is the goal outcomes. This is also just a quick reference, quick access for various goal outcomes with a progress bar indicating how close I am on that journey to completing that goal outcome. And my goal outcomes are attached to my value goals. We're going to do a video on this in the future on my pipeline to pillar pyramid, which links all these together. The point here is just in this daily action zone, there's a quick link to all of these. but this is not where I spend my hours day to day. Where I spend my hours day to day is focused like a laser beam on the action items just for today in order, one after another with quick transitions, checking off my daily tracking as I go on the things that I measure. And that's pretty much it. So it takes what we did in the last few videos and integrates it in a way that is just so focused in terms of execution. So it's pretty rare that I go into the original databases that we looked at in the past few videos, but I wanted to show you how they were constructed. So when we got into this dashboard, we could see what was bubbling up to the top. The whole objective here is focus on what matters, eliminate anything from the view that doesn't matter at that moment, and then periodically be able to look at the whole thing and prioritize, arrange, and assign due dates. But the structure is basically organized first by due date, the DO date, and then second by priority, and then you just go day to day, hour by hour, check those things off, get them done, move it forward periodically, at least weekly, sometimes nightly, look at what's coming up and what the priorities are across the whole week. It's just that simple. And you execute on that day to day, you are going to get things done. The whole secret is what you do every single day. If you do the right thing minute to minute, hour to hour, the days are going to work out, the weeks are going to work out, the months. And when you see it aggregate, when you get into this rhythm and you're executing like that, with that kind of consistency, with that kind of focus, you won't even believe what you're accomplishing over the course of a month or over the course of a quarter. I mean, even a week. Once you get into the rhythm of just executing like a laser beam on these items exactly as they're queued up, when you've got nothing distracting you on the screen, and everything was planned out the night before. So you're not sitting here trying to think of what you're going to do next. You know what's next up. So now that we've looked at what the target looks like through the scope of the rifle as you execute day to day, next we're going to start looking at branching off from the daily execution dashboard, which we just looked at today, and how that branches off into other workspaces, other work areas, up the pyramid into higher level priority, project, aspirations, life pillars. And so we're going to look up, we're going to look to the side, and we're going to look at what supports it underneath, the resources and the knowledge management that empower all of these actions. And in order to step into that, the next video, we're going to look at the flowchart of my system, because it'll be a launching point into then going section by section around this main action dashboard. And it'll also demonstrate to you how you can develop a flowchart to map out how you might want to build your system. If this is of interest, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to get updates on future videos. Leave thoughts or questions below and hit like if you found this valuable. I also write a newsletter called Mind and Machine on increasing human capability. I give away several of my best Notion templates to anyone who subscribes to the newsletter. You can unsubscribe at any time, of course, but I hope you'll give it a chance. I work hard to pack it with a lot of valuable insight. The newsletter link is also below in the show notes. Thank you for watching. Lots more to come.